Welcome to Ask the Expert. I'm Ted Craig, the editor-in-chief of Restoration and Remediation magazine. Our guest today is Paul Huszar. He's the president and CEO of VetCor, a restoration franchisor headquartered in Tampa, Florida. Welcome, Paul, and let's jump in. Why don't you tell us the story behind the VetCor name?
Ted, thanks for having me. I really appreciate what you're doing. It's great. The foundation of a profession is spreading information and knowledge and making the profession better. So I appreciate you doing this.
Thank you.
VetCor is a restoration company, just like others. But the thing that makes us unique is we primarily hire veterans and offer franchises to veterans and their immediate family members. And I think with that comes a lot of attributes that we try to replicate from our cultures, norms, and values of the military into the profession and into our team that we formed with VetCor and our franchise network. We're not exclusive to veterans, but if you're interested, you got to want to be a part of the team, share those same types of values, and also commit to trying to hire veterans and create opportunities for veterans.
And you yourself were a veteran, and that's how this started, correct?
I am. I went to West Point and then spent 23 years on active duty as an Army engineer officer. And when I retired, I found a lot of challenges like many veterans, and that stirred my passion when I had this opportunity to start VetCor to try and create opportunities for vets. I think there's a lot of things that are misunderstood. I think people in general honor and support our veterans, but because of some of the demographics, only about 7% of the population are veterans, and we're at a point in time where less than 0.5% of the population actively serves in the military. So I think most folks appreciate the freedoms that we have courtesy of our veterans, but don't necessarily understand us now. And so that's why I'm on a mission to try and change that.
So why restoration?
Well, it's interesting. I'm an accidental entrepreneur. I'm a licensed professional engineer. I have a bachelor's and master's in engineering. And when I retired and moved to Tampa, I found myself really challenged trying to find opportunities. And I had performed construction and engineering all of my life, and yet I personally was subject to some of those challenges that I'd be happy to talk about further about.
Sure.
But also, interestingly enough, and it was this crazy series of networking events that connected me with now who is my business partner, but at the time was the CEO of a forensics engineering company here in Tampa. He had been an Army officer for 5 years. His name is David Howard. Okay. And when he had just been hired to be the CEO of this forensics engineering company that primarily did cause and origin loss investigations for sinkholes, which was a big deal at the time, but their revenue started waning pretty significantly because of some legislation that mitigated the ability to file fraudulent claims. And so they were doing cause and origin loss investigations primarily for insurance carriers, and they had the need for that service was decreasing. So David was looking for other ways to vertically integrate service offerings to these great clients that they had. And he found me through my resume in engineering, and we got together and had a chat. And they had just founded VetCor really in kind of name only. They filed the articles of incorporation. David's experience in the insurance industry indicated the need for restoration and another way to offer insurance carrier clients great value. And he wanted to do something to help veterans. He's a veteran himself. And, he figured, veterans show up on time, fit, polite, and that would be our service differentiator. So that was one aspect. The second aspect of this was my last assignment on active duty. I was the dean of the Army's engineer school. My former title was the director of training and leader development, but people don't necessarily understand what that means. My counterpart at the Air Force Engineering School, his title was the dean, and I laugh. I said, at the time, it was before Space Force, the Air Force was the youngest service, and so therefore the closest to being a civilian, and so they use civilian titles. And so now I use civilian titles to explain that. But as the dean of the Army's Engineer School, I was responsible for the training and training development of 12 occupational specialties for Army engineers: plumbers, carpenters, electricians, firefighters, divers, and most of them are skilled trades. And when you train them at one centralized location for the Army and send them to 50 different states, because we train the Army's National Guard, as well as training them and sending them to all the active duty locations throughout the United States and the world, what I realized as I tried to solve some challenges is they get no credential, because credentialing for skilled trades is the authority for that lies at the state level.
Right.
And have you ever tried to get 50 states degree on anything? So it was this impossible task. At the same time, veteran unemployment was exceptionally high in the country. And the chief engineer at the time, 3-star general, came to me and said, we have a strategic problem. DOD is getting stuck with the unemployment bill when soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines transition out of the service and can't get a job. He said, I'm now the chief of engineers. He had been the chief personnel officer of the Army before that. He says, we got to fix that, Huszar. I said, yes, sir. and I went about trying to fix the problem. I realized the extent and complexity of the problem.
Okay.
So I couldn't fix it. It was an unsolvable problem. To this day, it's an unsolvable problem. So now I get this opportunity to transition myself as a licensed professional engineer. I'm faced with those same problems. And I get this introduction to David, and he says, hey, I want you to be the president of VetCor. Crazy story. And as I realize there's no certification, there's a certification requirement, training requirement,
right.
3-day course for a water damage restoration technician. That's a nationally recognized certification, no license requirement, except in some states, as you're probably aware, for mold remediation and some other things like biotrauma, et cetera.
Right. But for the basics, you can.
Yeah. And so I said, wow, I could attempt to solve this problem another way. And those kind of confluence of events is what created this opportunity and made me passionate about it.
Okay. And you started with the one location. When did you start franchising the name? Yeah,
so we started, I was hired in 2013. We really started earning revenue in 2014 at one location in Tampa. I had the opportunity to buy the company and become majority owner in October of 2014. David stayed on as a minority partner, and then we opened a second location along the Gulf Coast in Florida. About a year later, we opened a third location in Southeast Florida based on the needs of insurance carriers and kind of the challenges, particularly with integrity and frankly, cottage industry that had developed in South Florida, really trying to sue insurance companies and really harmful to public policy and consumers as well. And then through those 3 offices and our relationships that evolved, now we're a preferred vendor for 60 insurance companies and 9 third-party administrators. We also got faced with some challenges like the hurricanes that hit the state. And we took our military experience and put it to work, contingency planning, based on principles of reception, staging, onward movement, and integration, some things we learned in the military. And we really exceeded our normal size and kind of outkicked our coverage. And we did well for the carriers and TPAs. So we gained some success. We'd also gained some notoriety from some awards that we had won. And in 2017, after Hurricane Irma, I'll say I built up a war chest. It wasn't really a war chest, but we made some decent money, and we certainly made it a very good reputation amongst those teams. And I said, I want to do more. But it's really hard to expand a business through your own personal means, through debt financing or things. So I started exploring the franchise model, and I got some really good advice. I started going to the International Franchise Association conference in 2017 and 2018. And then learning about franchising, then made the decision to start franchising. We started in 2019, August of 2019. And oh, by the way, 6 months before COVID.
Right. Yeah, it's a story I've heard many times from many entrepreneurs. Like, if I known COVID was going to happen.
Yep.
Although maybe that worked out to an extent. I don't know. Did it?
Well, for the restoration industry, it proved pretty good, I'll say, because we're an essential service, right? We're a recession-proof, pandemic-proof industry. And we actually expanded a little bit. We started doing some COVID disinfecting, although I think the politics and the science and all that stuff created challenges that didn't really expand like we thought it would. but it still proved to be recession-proof and pandemic-proof. And so business was generally pretty good for our industry. The challenge for us is, now I'm the CEO of two companies, VetCor Franchising and VetCor. The restoration company and the franchises that were already established by then were doing well, but the franchising piece, awarding franchises is an intensely personal decision.
Right.
You're asking people to invest in themselves and leave mostly a career and invest in themselves and start a business. Well, an intensely personal decision is really tough to make if you can't meet people in person. And so we weren't able to go to the franchise conferences. They just didn't exist. We did a lot. We had planned to do a lot of things with transitioning veterans at those types of conferences. And we just couldn't do it. They didn't exist. And so we had to adapt. We did, and by most measures, we're pretty successful as an emerging franchisor, but not to the degree that I thought we could and should have been. But we had to adapt like everybody else.
Okay. So where are you at now?
So now we have 15 franchise locations. We still own the corporate location in Tampa, although originally it covered 6 counties surrounding Tampa Bay. Now we're just focused on Hillsborough County. Then we have 6 franchises in Florida. We have 2 in Texas, 1 in New York, 1 in Georgia, 1 in Virginia, 1 in New York. Just recently opened one in Lexington, Kentucky, and next Friday we'll be opening one in Miami Valley of Ohio, and we awarded one in Mobile, Alabama as well.
Okay. They're not all veterans though.
No, all but 3 of them are.
Okay.
So in Northwest Orlando, we have a partner, a teammate who was a former insurance agent. So he knows the industry. He also knows the value of restoration in the industry. In Lexington, Kentucky, it's a former adjuster who had worked with us in the past and actually heard about us through some continuing education we did.
Okay.
And he's applying his experience in the restoration industry. And then in Mobile, Alabama, it's a partner who came to us from a broker. He was looking at some other brands, and he owns a significant amount of rental properties. So he understands the importance of facilities management, and particularly with his rental properties, has experienced some of these challenges.
Yeah, so especially in Mobile, right?
Yeah. So all very good partners with some experience that's related to the industry, and certainly see the value of our brand in this industry, which is recession-proof, pandemic-proof, a very good business opportunity for folks. And I think our brand presents a different perspective than most, if not all others, with respect to kind of, technicians showing up fit, polite, on time, treating people with dignity and respect, responding to people's needs in their time of emergency.
Have you received any support from the military in terms of finding employees or even franchisees?
Not from the military, and I tell people, the military is the largest bureaucracy in the world.
Right.
But there are some exceptional programs out there for veterans. There's one called Skill Bridge, where you can hire a transitioning active duty military person and basically onboard them for their last 3 to 4 months of active duty, and you don't have to pay them anything. It's a fellowship where the military continues to pay them on active duty. And at the end of that time, you just have to commit to at least, thinking about hiring them full time. And what I tell people is, man, that's a great way. If you think there's risk in hiring veterans, and I don't personally, but I recognize some of the perceptions and stigmas that go along with that. Would you take one for free for 3 months, right?
Free's nice.
Yep. There's some other advantages. For example, in Florida, there's an organization called Veterans Florida, whose mission is to bring veterans to the state of Florida. They have entrepreneurship programs, job boards, and they have this incredible training grant program where they will pay an employer for a significant portion of the training that helps get a technician or project manager or someone up to speed in a new profession. The same thing is true with the VA. The Department of Veterans Affairs has some significantly rich programs, a little bit more bureaucratic, but they have a program called the Special Employer Incentive Program. They'll pay the salary of employee, half of that salary for up to 6 months to offset training costs and help them get into a new profession. There are work opportunity tax credits for veterans that you bring on if they're currently unemployed, and you provide them an employment opportunity. So not necessarily the military, but the Department of Veterans Affairs, other organizations have opportunities. The Skill Bridge program is actually a DoD program. So there are some programs now because the DoD has recognized they've got to do something to mitigate the challenges with and help veterans transition, help active duty transition to careers as veterans when they retire, get out of the military.
Right. Yeah, they're not veterans till they get out, right? So.
Yep.
How do you see your growth going forward?
Well, frankly, we're pretty excited and optimistic, particularly as two things have happened. One, that forcing function of COVID made us figure out the world of digital advertising, digital marketing, social media. So we figured that out, I think, and so we're seeing a significant change, and we've gotten good partners in to help us in that endeavor. Also, now as restrictions are lifted, now I was able to attend conferences in person, and we have some pretty significant ones for us. We attend a quarterly conference now. It's called the Service Academy Career Conference. So for transitioning military like me that went to one of the nation's service academies, either as junior mid-grade officer getting out or someone like me retiring, those are great franchise candidates. And someone told us about it, and it's typically like Fortune 500 companies. I'm letting the cat out of the bag for all the people, but I'm happy to, because we can't hire them all. We can't turn them all into VetCor franchisees. But it's typically like Fortune 500 companies that understand the talent that the U.S. military, garners and brings to the nation after people transition out of the service of the military. So it was really, when we went to the first one, it was us and Chick-fil-A. And the rest of them are Fortune 500 companies. We're starting to see some other franchise brands now attend those. We're still connected. I still have a network in the military. We attended the Society of American Military Engineers conference in May in Colorado, an annual conference. And those are all my peers, all the general officers in the Army Corps of Engineers now. I went to West Point with, and they're all getting ready to transition. And there are a lot of federal contractors there that were former military that I know, have personal relationships with. And, they may just be looking for something different. They don't want to work for the man anymore. They've got some civilian experience now. They maybe have built up a little nest egg, and so are able to think about becoming a business owner and changing their quality of life and building wealth.
And what does VetCor provide to its franchisees that makes it a worthwhile investment for them?
Yeah, so I tell people, and I studied franchising essentially for 2 years before we started it. And so now I run a restoration company and I run a franchising company. And what I learned about franchising is the essence of franchising is really training, standardizing, and replicating. Ted, you know any organizations in the world that have great reputations at training, standardizing,
right,
and replicating? So I feel like it really plays to our strength. Our chief operating officer is a retired Army sergeant major. Okay. For those people out there listening who don't know what a sergeant major is, it's basically a chief operating officer.
Right,
so,
right.
His attention to detail, his technical assistance, his willingness to roll up his sleeves, to lead by example. He's the guy that created the foundation of our training program, which, in my opinion, is world class. I think that our carriers, our TPAs, our customers will attest to that fact. That what they've seen is exceptional technical performance by our franchisees and their teams. Also, our dedication to customer service in that training. We approach these as win-win problems. Some restoration companies say, these companies that perform on with TPAs and program work, they become beholden to insurance companies.
Right.
Look, I commanded one of the Army's 3 airborne engineer battalions. I haven't been beholden to anybody in my lifetime. But what we do is I think we see things much differently. We see things as win-win team approaches, actually win-win-win. We get there, we complete the mission, we do that, we take care of the customer, or typically out of there before most companies are, because of our work ethic, our knowledge, our technical expertise, where it may take 4 or 5 days to dry something, we're in there and out in 3 days. When you do that, the customer's happy, right?
Right.
Typically, when you do that and you take 1 to 2 days less drying time because of the hard work and efforts you put up front, typically the claim is lower. When the claim is lower, their insurance carrier is happy. And when you do that based on fair pricing that has a reasonable profit built in, we win. And so it's win-win-win. And when win-win-win happens, guess what? You get more jobs. Your
Right.
reputation increases. Right now, we have a 95% exceptionally satisfied rating by the technician who comes to perform the service. That's unheard of in any service industry.
Yeah.
And so all that, I think, is really a result of the exceptional training program we offer. Our director of franchise training, retired Marine gunnery sergeant, combat engineer. Our director of franchise support, retired Army Sergeant First Class in the Chemical, Biological, Radiological Corps in the Army. Our director of franchise coaching, former Army captain, actually one of my platoon leaders in the battalion I commanded in Iraq.
Oh, great.
So, that's the kind of support, training, et cetera, you get as a VetCor franchisee. And we'll stack that up against anybody.
Sounds great. Okay. Well, you've answered all of my questions. Is there anything you would like to add that you think people should know about VetCor?
We are dedicated. Our vision is to become the brand known for timely, quality, reliable service and the value of veterans, and to become the premier private employer of veterans in the United States. As a result, we think that we can accomplish our mission, which is to create exceptional customer service for our customers, great value for our partners, whether it's insurance carriers or property managers or resort owners, et cetera, all the while creating meaningful, sustainable employment opportunities and now business ownership opportunities through our franchising network for veterans. If that helps anybody in any way, because that's embedded in our mission, we're happy to help. We're happy to help fellow restoration companies hire veterans. I've got a white paper on where you can find them to talk about some of these incentive programs.
Great.
Other industry associations, chambers of commerce. We're happy to help veterans understand what their value is they bring to the workplace. Happy to talk to them about franchising, about business ownership, because all those things are embedded in our mission of what we're trying to do. And we believe if we do that with the greatest sincerity, that we're going to find franchisees, and our franchisees are going to join the team, and we're going to create this network of primarily, but not exclusively, former military professionals that have the ability to respond to disasters in the time the nation needs them and our individual customers need them. And we're going to grow VetCor. And so we're happy to collaborate with anybody out there listening about any of those things anytime. That's not what we do for a profit, but it's what we do for why we exist. And we believe if we do that, the profit, the building of the company will come naturally and it will follow.
Great. Well, Paul, I thank you for your time. Thank you for your service, and good luck going forward then.
Ted, thanks so very much. I appreciate you doing this.